Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 54th annual presentation of the North Carolina Awards. I'm Susie Hamilton, Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and it is my privilege to welcome you tonight as we celebrate 6 remarkable North Carolinians. We are also honored tonight to be joined by Governor Roy Cooper and First Lady Kristen Cooper. Also this evening, we are honored to have with us representatives from the North Carolina General Assembly, the governor's senior staff and our cabinet agencies, and representatives from our university system. Thank you for your dedicated and tireless service to the people of North Carolina. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce John Wilson, Chair of the North Carolina Awards Committee. Here you are.
Thank you, Secretary Hamilton. Good evening. The North Carolina Awards were created by the North Carolina General Assembly in 1961 and have been presented annually since 1964. The award recognizes significant contributions to the state and nation in the fields of fine arts, literature, public service, and science. Each year, the awards are a chance for us to honor men and women who reflect the very best in creativity, innovation, artistic endeavors, and humanitarian service. The process for selecting these 6 outstanding North Carolinians has been gratifying, not only because of the accomplishments of the recipients, but because of the hard work of the members of the awards committee with whom I have the honor of serving. Louise Coggins, Thomas DeFrance, Eleanor Owen, and Cindy Patterson, who unfortunately is not able to be with us this evening. But would Louise, Thomas, and Eleanor please stand and be recognized? It's my honor tonight to welcome the previous award winners who are with us this evening. As I call your names, would you each please stand and remain standing? And would the audience please hold its applause until all previous recipients are standing. Dr. James Applewhite, Literature, 1995. Myron S. Cohen, Science, 2013. Frank Daniels, Jr., Public Service, 1999. Julia Jones Daniels, Public Service, 1999. Thomas Willis Lambeth, Public Service, 2005. Elizabeth Matheson, Fine Arts, 2004. Margaret Togg Newman, Public Service, 2010. Dr. Charles Sanders, Science, 2006. Thomas H. Sayer, Fine Arts, 2012. And Bland Simpson, Fine Arts, 2005. Please join me in applauding these great North Carolinians. Tonight, we also remember previous North Carolina Award winners who passed away over the last year. Billy Graham, Public Service, 1986. John Ely, Literature, 1972. Richard Jenrette, Public Service, 1994. Dr. H.G. Jones, Public Service, 2002. We are all enriched by their having been among us, and we miss them. I would also like to mention that an award winner who was named during this time last year, Banks Talley Jr., His son, Banks, and daughter, Noelle, are with us this evening. Banks Talley was a true public servant, and he is missed by so many. A moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you will, please stand and join me for a toast to our award winners. John, join me at the podium. This is just water. Here's to the land of the long-leaf pine, the summer land where the sun doth shine, where the wheat grows strong and the strong grow great. Here's to down home, the old North State. Cheers. Thank you all again for joining us tonight as we present the 2018 North Carolina Awards. I want to thank our sponsors this evening. This event would not have been possible without the generous support of the Bob Barker Company, Wells Fargo, Martin Marietta, Joseph M. Bryan, UNC Rex Healthcare, Thomas Keenan III, CBC WRAL Community Fund of the Triangle Community Foundation, UNC Chapel Hill, and Creative Visions. I want to give a special thanks to Lenovo, who sponsors our Teachers of the Year every year. Wells Fargo, who sponsors our Principals of the Year, and our partner, the North Carolina Literary and Historical Association. Thank you very much for all of your support. It is my honor to serve as a member of Governor Roy Cooper's cabinet. Governor Cooper works each day to make North Carolina a better place to live, work, and raise a family. During his many years of distinguished public service to our state, he has demonstrated his belief that our rich culture and heritage is woven into who we are as North Carolinians, whether we're here by birth or by choice. And now, it is my very great honor and pleasure to introduce to you the Honorable Governor of North Carolina, Mr. Roy Cooper.
Stand up here.
Yes, sir. You can use either one you'd like.
Thank you very much, everyone. I hope everybody's having a good time tonight. Thank you, Secretary Hamilton, and I want to recognize once again my amazing wife and the First Lady of North Carolina, Kristen Cooper. She's been working hard all over the state. But before we begin our award ceremony, it's my pleasure to recognize the state's Teachers and Principals of the Year. This is one of my favorite parts because this is where the respect level goes way up. There are 8 regional Principals of the Year, and 7 of them are with us tonight. I'd like to call out their names and ask them to stand and be recognized. And please hold your applause until we're finished. I guess you guys can raise the lights a little bit. Tabari Wallace, the 2018 Wells Fargo North Carolina Principal of the Year and Southeast Regional Principal of the Year from Craven County Schools. Jim Butler, Sand Hills Regional Principal of the Year from Richmond County Schools. Jonathan Enns, North Central Regional Principal of the Year from Wake County Public Schools. Melissa Godfrey, Western Regional Principal of the Year from Cherokee County Schools. Titus Hopper, Southwest Regional Principal of the Year from Cleveland County Schools. Desiree Kirkpatrick, Northwest Regional Principal of the Year from McDowell County Schools. And Michelle White, Northeast Regional Principal of the Year from Edenton-Trewan Public Schools. Let's give these educators a big hand. There are also here 9 Regional Teachers of the Year. And all 9 of them are with us this evening. I met both principals and teachers. I knew many of them before, but we were with them earlier tonight. So as I call their names, I'd ask that they also stand and be recognized. And again, hold your applause until finished, but I know it's hard. Brian Freebird McKinney, 2018 Burroughs Welcome Fund North Carolina Teacher of the Year, and Piedmont Triad Regional Teacher of the Year from Alamott's Burlington School System. Simone Graham, Southwest Regional Teacher of the Year from Mooresville Graded School District. Cameron Gupton, Southeast Regional Teacher of the Year from Greene County Schools. Kaylee Kiffner, Northeast Regional Teacher of the Year from McCormick County Schools. Julie Pittman, Western Regional Teacher of the Year from Rutherford County Schools. Courtney Samuelson, Charter Schools Teacher of the Year from the Capital Encore Academy. Lindsay Seiss, Sandhills Regional Teacher of the Year from Hope County Schools. Kadisha Stewart, North Central Regional Teacher of the Year from Vance County Schools. And Lisa Wall, Northwest Regional Teacher of the Year from Burke County Public Schools. My respect and admiration for educators is deep. And on behalf of the state of North Carolina, I am grateful for your dedication, your compassion, and your creativity. Let's give these educators a big hand. Great teacher in every classroom and a great principal in every school. That's where we need to be. The North Carolina Award is our highest civilian honor. Over the years, we've honored artists, poets, writers, performers, journalists, scientists, and public servants. Tonight, we add the names of 6 more extraordinary North Carolinians to that list. A journalist and musician whose vibrant storytelling led him to not 1, but 2 award-winning careers. A distinguished writer and poet who celebrated works a distinguished writer and poet whose celebrated works evoke the people, places, and language of North Carolina. A devoted advocate of American art and historic preservation. A dedicated journalist considered by many to be one of the finest newspaper editors of his generation. A passionate leader in the fight for better health care for all North Carolinians. A fearless activist and supporter of communities of color and working families. And now, our first award recipient. Many of you know him from his years as a reporter and anchor for WRAL. He caught the news bug growing up in Morganton, where he used to listen to broadcasts on a transistor radio. He started his journalism career in radio and won his first of 2 Peabody Awards as an executive producer and reporter on WRAL-FM's Victims documentary series. He also began a successful career in music, releasing 8 albums with a 9th on the way that are deeply rooted in his home state. All have reached the top of world music charts. Whatever the medium, his storytelling through words and music resonates deeply with people around the world. And now, in his own words, Bill Leslie.
I love telling stories. I grew up on my grandmother's front porch where storytelling was a real art. I grew up in Morganton, North Carolina, as I put it in a song, in the shadow of the Blue Ridge rain, in a pretty town by the river, cold water that would make you shiver even in the summertime. My dad was quite an artist. I wrote a book about him called Blue Ridge Reunion. He did watercolors of the mountains. A lot of his creative blood is flowing in my veins. I had an intense fascination with radio when I was young. I got a transistor radio when I was 10 years old, and I would go under the covers at night and listen to all of these broadcasts from all over the country. And I just dreamed of one day doing that for a living. I worked as a disc jockey for a while, and I didn't feel fulfilled, and so I got into news. And I worked at a radio station in Winston, Salem with Rick Dees. Who was one of my best buddies in college. He played the music, I did the news, 2020 News. And I went to Carolina, worked at WKIX with people like John Tesh. I taught John how to run the board. It was his first job. I just fell in love with the business. I had several people showing interest in me as a television person, and so I just decided to make the move. I became a weekend anchor. I did the Tar Heel Traveler. I did some pretty intense environmental reporting. That was probably the most gratifying part of my career, exploring pollution issues, not only at the state level, but at the national level as well, when we filmed the Navy dumping plastic waste right off the North Carolina coast, which led to congressional hearings, which I had to go up and testify before. That was kind of intimidating. And then, to see corrective change, the Navy equipping their ships with the necessary recycling gear, and then all of the major changes that came about after our documentary Troubled Rivers ran, collaboration and cooperation among various political entities, and that brought about some terrific change for the quality of our rivers. I was just blown away by the going away party WREO gave me. I had no idea it was going to be so grand and wonderful. But that's the WREO way, You work hard and play hard, and then in the end, when it's time to retire, they treat you as they've always treated you, with a great deal of respect. I heard the music of North Carolina. I probably was a musician before I was a journalist. I've always had a tune kind of running in my head. Folk singers and bluegrass pickers, country crooners and city slickers. I listened and I loved it all. I find more joy in writing music than probably anything I do in my life. It's almost like a spiritual experience. I've been called a landscape composer. I get inspired by beautiful scenes, beautiful vistas. My love for the state stretches from, the mountains to the coast. I was working hard at TV and I was working hard at music, and I'm very appreciative of my family for putting up with me, with my crazy hours, getting up at 2:30 in the morning. To have the freedom to pursue two things that you really love like that, I feel very blessed.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Fine Arts, Bill Leslie. Bill, if you'd like to make a few remarks.
Thank you so much, Governor. It's so great to be here. I woke up in a panic this morning. I looked at the alarm clock, and it said 2:40. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for work today. And then I realized I'd been dreaming about my early morning TV days at WREL, and that I actually retired in June so I could sleep in. But I tried to get back to sleep, but I couldn't. I guess I was just too excited about being here tonight. It is so much fun to see a lot of old friends and to make some new ones tonight. You know, my parents, I think, really would be excited to be here tonight as well. I wish they could be here, but they're gone. But they taught me early in life just how wonderful it is to be a North Carolinian. What a wonderful state we have in terms of the beauty of the land, but also the beauty and the kindness and the wisdom of the people. My love and respect for North Carolina certainly shows up in the hundreds of stories that I have written over the years, the documentaries that I've done, but also, as the governor mentioned, I think in the songs that I have composed and recorded. And I'm working on a new album this week, and it's going to have a whole lot of North Carolina in it. And I think that is why this award means so much to me. It's because I have such a dear love for the state. Folks in the newsroom at WREL will tell you that I am like, the North Carolina nerd. Everybody comes to me with, how do you pronounce this town? Or how do you pronounce that county? How do you do this Forsyth? No, accent on the second syllable, Forsyth. I am so deeply grateful to be a part of such a wonderful group like Carolyn Coleman, a civil rights trailblazer. I mean, to be on a stage with her tonight, with Michael McFee, a literary luminary. And I tell you tonight, I had a chat with one of the journalistic giants, Gene Roberts. What a fantastic man he is. Healthcare visionary, William Roper, and author and art expert, Barbara Millhouse. Just a few thank yous. My wife, Cindy, I love you so much. 42 years of marriage, you have stood by me. It's always great to have a speech therapist when you're in broadcasting. My lovely daughter, Lauren, her husband, Luke, they're here tonight. My strong and beautiful sisters, Stephanie and Miriam, and my brother-in-law, Barry, love you so much. Special thanks to my favorite news director of all time, Rick Gall, his wife, Pam, over there at that table. My best broadcast buddy of all time, Renee Chu, and her husband, Mike. Oh, and the Neils, John and Debbie. Debbie was the one who made that quilt out of my neckties for retirement. The most amazing thing you've ever seen. And my good buddy, T. Jerry Williams, who saw to it that I got the Charles Gerald Award a few years ago. Thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Special thanks to the awards committee and to Governor Roy Cooper, who I think is one of the finest governors we've ever had in this state. A positive, progressive voice at a time when we really need it. I am so deeply honored. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next award winner, an Asheville native. This next award winner writes poetry and prose that examines what makes ordinary people, places, and things extraordinary. Whether it's a family member, a well-worn quilt, or even a saltine cracker, he uses his subjects to tell vital, beautiful, tragic, and thrilling stories. The author of 16 books, he has published 11 collections of poetry and 2 collections of essays. He has been a professor of English and comparative literature at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill since 1990, where he mentors upcoming writers. A champion of North Carolina's literary culture, he's also reviewed books and provided literary criticism for WUNC-FM in Chapel Hill, the Arts Journal in Asheville, and the Spectator magazine in Raleigh. And now, in his own words, Michael McFee.
The best writing that I do is a gift to where I am, in the sense that it's paying attention to where I am. The beauty of living here in Chapel Hill and Durham is you got 3 hours one way or the other and you're in a totally different landscape. And I think North Carolina is fairly unique to have that range because each landscape has a different culture, a different barbecue, a different accent. What a gift to have that. And to have been born here was a real stroke of luck as a writer. I was born in Asheville and grew up south of town in a little crossroads called Arden. Once I got done here, I realized I missed having the mountains at the horizon. Also, my family, the people I knew there, people from Appalachia really are a bit different from others. So I guess I was absorbing things without realizing I was absorbing them for writing because I did not set out to be a writer. I thought I wanted to be an architect and started college at NC State to do that. But once I made my way into a poetry writing class here at Chapel Hill, I started thinking about what really interested me. What I tell my students is you're looking for the thing you can't not do, the thing you've got to do with your life. And I just really enjoyed playing with words in that way and making these little word worlds called poems. I think the first poem I wrote in the class was about a fire tower on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I've kept writing poems and essays about the mountains ever since. I'm almost always inspired by things around me in daily life, things I see or hear. And I always carry in my pocket a piece of paper that I write notes on. I wrote a series of poems about stuff I ate when I was a kid that I don't eat anymore. You know, like saltines, which we just ate all the time growing up. It was like our hors d'oeuvres, or how we would salt watermelon when we ate it.
Juicy watermelon on the picnic table. That seedy red meat sweaty with melting crystals.
A lot of the poems are rooted in memories, and those memories are always really sensory and specific. It's not like, I think I want to write a poem about the meaning of family. I could not write that poem. But if I could write a poem about my weird uncle or the aunt that I loved or how my mother used to say, I swan. I got a poem out of that, just out of the language that she used. When I have a student come in who's from some small town in North Carolina, if you can help show that student that you don't need to write poems about nightingales and sort of more English lit kinds of things, but there are poems back home where you're from, often the results can be amazing. To see younger writers really getting engaged with the possibilities of the language and of imagery and of the structure of the poem, it helps to remind me why I got into it in the first place, especially with the students at Carolina. They want to make a difference in the world, and for some of them that's meant to be a writer. I've read poems at their weddings. I just became the godparent to one of their children. We become a family. My mentor and late colleague Doris Betts used to say, the literary community in North Carolina is cooperative and not competitive. We're happy for the successes of our fellow writers. I love going out into the state and reading or talking with not just fellow professors and writing students, but other North Carolinians. I think many of us were raised or taught that poetry is written in a kind of code that you have to have the secrets to unlock. It's true that poetry has a mysterious quality to it, but it's not a secret code. If you're somebody who enjoys words, you can enjoy poetry.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Literature, Michael McFee.
Very dramatic. Thank you, Governor Cooper. As everyone just heard our great friend Doris Betts like to say, the literary community in North Carolina is cooperative and not competitive. How right she was. As a reader, as a reviewer, as an editor, as a writer, and as a teacher of writers, I am mighty fortunate to have been born in this state at this time, and then to have become part of that community of locally rooted and hard-working and fun-having authors who revere the almighty written word. What more could a lyric poet ask? Let me offer a few quick wishes and thanks. I wish my mother Lucy and father Bill could have been here, especially Mom, who loved doggerel and ghost wrote my early verses and would have called this black tie rig a tuck. I wish her youngest sister, my Aunt Mickey, could have been here. She was the first adult I ever saw writing and taking poems seriously, and was always my encourager and advocate. And I wish my South Buncombe High School English teacher, Eleanor Ponder, could have been here, one of a host of smart, tenacious, generous mountain women who were so kind to the young me. But many others could come tonight to these festivities. I am delighted, indeed, I am overwhelmed to have high school friends of half a century in the room, as well as dear friends from undergraduate days and colleagues from my decades working at Carolina, and former students who have become like family to my wife and me. I thank all of them so much for taking the time and making the effort to be here. I thank my nominator for this award, Bland Simpson, a fine arts medalist and the greatest statriot I know. I thank my artistic son and his wife, Philip and Laura, for coming down from their home in Cleveland, Ohio, to share this evening. Above all, I thank my profoundly supportive and patient wife of 40 years, Belinda, who never once said to me, "Forget writing poems, get a real job." To receive such an honor, previously bestowed on Tar Heel writers I've admired so deeply for so long, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, this is a joy almost beyond belief. Thank you.
Our next award winner. She was just 26 years old when she began preserving her family home in Winston, Salem, and assembling a collection of American art to fill it. Her studies in art history and her passion for preserving the history of Rinalda House led her to found one of the world's most outstanding collections of American art. Millions of people have visited Rinalda House Museum to view the works of American masters, including Gilbert Stuart, Grant Wood, and Georgia O'Keeffe. Visitors also enjoy the beautifully restored home, expansive gardens, and farm buildings, which now house boutiques and cafes, making Rinalda House a destination like none other. And now, in her own words, Barbara Babcock Millhouse.
The arts are really transforming. I mean, one day somebody may walk in here who has never been to a museum and see a work of art that, just to use the phrase, turn them on. And life may never be the same for them. This was a wonderful house. You just look at it and you want to start entertaining. Our friends would come over and go and play in the basement. We had bowling, ping pong, a shooting gallery, but Mother always made sure that people went home by 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. When President Truman came down for the groundbreaking of Wake Forest, my parents had a luncheon. After lunch, Truman always took a nap. So he was led back into the study where there's a big leather sofa and took a nap. And my father had to watch over him while he was asleep. People were going through this house. We knew it attracted people, but there was no meaning. They weren't getting any meaning out of going through a house. They're just looking at the way rich people lived. We had a lecture here by Stuart Feld, who was the Associate Curator of American Art at the Metropolitan Museum. And he and I talked about the possibility of a collection of American art. I was so overwhelmed by that lecture. It was on our country's first major portrait painter, John Singleton Copley. It was a revelation to me that an American artist was as good an artist as he was, because in my day, in the 60s, there was a general mood that American art was insignificant. Today, what we have here are really icons of American art. I'll tell you of our first acquisition, which was Andes of Ecuador by Frederick Church. So we are at Kennedy Galleries, and they brought out this incredibly gorgeous painting. And we were just totally awe-inspired by it. But in New York, the museum didn't even take it. Now you have to realize in this period, almost all of the contemporary artists were doing abstract expressionist works. They were supposed to be spontaneous. And these paintings, of course, are very intricate. My favorite paintings are the ones that really yield the most interesting interpretations. There's a painting in the collection by Jasper Cropsey. He has all the symbols that the Hudson River School used. Thomas Cole, who was the founder of the Hudson River School, used water for the passage of life. Cropsey uses a tiny stream. It's just tiny little bits of gray paint. He's doing the same thing, because the stream, which starts off small, which is childhood, and then it goes into a very placid lake in the background, which is youth. And then the rapids are hit. That's manhood. In the distance is a chapel, and that chapel represents redemption. And the painting is called Mounts Adam and Eve. It's very important to have material examples of history, and that's what Ranolda is. People could drive up and just walk into this house. It was so welcoming. You know, it's even designed like an embrace. People called in those days on you. I mean, you had to be ready for visitors, certainly on Saturday afternoon. You can read a whole way of life here that has a lot to do with a sense of community. You have to have a community that cares, or else this wouldn't exist. I think Winston-Salem is a place that welcomes the arts. I would certainly like Ranolda House to continue to inspire.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Fine Arts, Barbara Babcock Millhouse.
Well, I'm so overwhelmed. First, I want to thank Governor Cooper for this wonderful honor. And my family told me they did not want to be mentioned, but they are here, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that so many people came from Winston-Salem. I'm sure we have at least 3 tables of supporters from Winston-Salem. I'm proud. I'm also somewhat humbled by receiving this award. But I'm really happy that my friends are here and took the time to come to this celebration. It's very meaningful to me that you are all here. I also want to extend my gratitude for the many generous individuals who nominated me for this honor. Not sure exactly who you are, but I do want to thank you. Last year, several of my best friends, fellow art collectors, and colleagues from the Metropolitan Museum of Art visited North Carolina for a 4-day sweeping tour of American art. And they started their tour here in Raleigh with the North Carolina Museum of Art. They enjoyed seeing the Anne and Jim Goodnight's collection. They stopped for a visit to the late Dick Jenrett's beautifully preserved Airmont in Hillsborough. And finally, they concluded their tour in Winston-Salem by spending time with us at Ranolda House Museum of American Art and visiting Old Salem as well. It was sort of hard to get them down here, actually, but it was a delight to see North Carolina's cultural treasures through the eyes of fellow collectors of American art. They were impressed and astonished by what we already knew, the quality and abundance of what we have in our state. As you have seen, my life's work has been devoted to developing the American art collection that now resides in my grandparents' estate. It has been personally rewarding to create a place that inspires and makes people curious, to discover something new about our nature and history at Ranolda. I see this award as a positive reflection of what Ranolda has become for North Carolina. So please accept my personal invitation for those of you who've not visited Ranolda House to come to see our collection and our changing exhibitions. Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you. I can't see you, all the wonderful people that have come here to support me and Ranolda House this evening. Thank you.
With the steps or the ramp.
Our next award winner began his career in newspapers as a farm reporter for the Goldsboro News Argus in 1956. From that modest beginning, he went on to a storied career in journalism at the Detroit Free Press, the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's widely considered to be one of the finest newspaper editors of his generation and one of the best journalists of the 20th century. Along the way, he covered monumental and tumultuous issues like the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War. All the while, he mentored young, talented reporters and advocated for journalistic freedom. His tenure at the Philadelphia Inquirer is known as newspaper's golden age, when it earned the Pulitzer Prize 17 times in 18 years. Along with co-author Hank Klibanoff, he won another Pulitzer in 2007 for their book about the role of the press in civil rights. Throughout his career, he held fast to a journalist's duty to seek and report the truth. And now, in his own words, Gene Roberts.
Civil rights was probably the single most important story in America when the movement really started. A lot of change depended on the story getting out. I went from Goldsboro to Norfolk, Virginia. 6 schools were closed to prevent desegregation with about a dozen black students. That was my first brush with the civil rights story. And then I left Norfolk to work with the Raleigh News and Observer and covered the sit-ins when they moved to Raleigh, and Martin Luther King when he flew in to Durham to get involved in the sit-in movement. I saw kind of firsthand how much support Martin Luther King had and the sit-in movement had. In Raleigh, it was mixed. Some people liked the idea of change and other people did not. During a political rally, it was in Lumberton, North Carolina. The segregationist candidate pointed me out in the crowd, and the local editor sort of saved my bacon. He came and hid me in his darkened office until things calmed down a bit. I was hit once with a brick in Birmingham. There was kind of a sense of disorientation in the South. Occasionally I had to go into the black community to file my story and feel safe. It was certainly true that the South during the Civil Rights era was highly divided and polarized. But the polarization across the nation is much more severe than it was during my early years as a reporter, with the South being an exception. I got to the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1972. As a reporter, I was always hoping that editors would stay out of my way and let me do my thing. And as an editor, I tried to put that into practice. We had a newspaper that encouraged reporters to dig as hard as they could dig and rewarded strong reporting on the part of the staff. Reporters felt that if they came up with good leads or a good idea, we would let them pursue it. Before I got to Philadelphia, I was a war correspondent in Vietnam. I covered the Battle of Hue and the Tet Offensive. After covering Vietnam, I became national editor of the New York Times. Interestingly, I thought probably the most competitive situation I was ever in was covering the state legislature for the Raleigh News and Observer. Papers like Winston, Salem, Greensboro, Charlotte sent their best reporters into Raleigh to cover it. The level of reporter expertise was quite good. I've always thought of myself as a North Carolinian. I always thought ultimately I would get back to the state. I'm involved in the historic Bath Foundation. We've spent almost $1 million restoring the former Bath High School, creating a museum that's operated by the State Historic Site. Bath has the oldest church building in the state and one of the oldest houses, the Palmer Marsh House. During the Tuscarora Indian War, Bath was a refugee center, and Blackbeard, of course, operated out of here. I think Bath is one of the nice little treasures of North Carolina.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Public Service, Gene Roberts.
Most of my working career was spent outside of North Carolina, but my wife, Susan, and I continued to think of ourselves as North Carolinians. We were born here, raised here, and educated here. The ties to the state were sufficiently strong that they endured through work assignments as far-flung as Hong Kong and Vietnam. And to make sure the ties lasted, we bought retirement property in Bath, the state's oldest town, 50 years ago, determined to someday return to North Carolina. And because we identify so closely with the state, I am especially pleased and grateful for the North Carolina Award. I and my family thank you for it, for tonight's ceremony, and for the privilege of being North Carolinians. Thank you.
Throughout his career as a doctor, administrator, and professor, our next award winner has advocated for better health care for all. A lifelong public servant, he served as a county health officer, special assistant to the President of the United States for health policy, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and now serves as the dean of the UNC School of Medicine, Vice Chancellor for Medical Affairs, and CEO of the UNC Healthcare System. By the way, he's recently been named as interim president of the University of North Carolina System beginning January the 1st. Throughout his career, he's focused attention on preventive care, mental health services, training new doctors, and expanding access to medical services in North Carolina's rural communities. And now, in his own words, Bill Roper.
There's a quote from long ago, actually from the Bible, that says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." And I was helped to understand that as a young person, and along the way learned from others the notion of service, investing oneself in doing something for a larger community or the nation or the world. That's really what this is about. I've chosen to invest myself in health and public health, but it's really the concept of being of service. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama. Many people have had difficult childhoods, and I don't have any of those stories because I grew up in a wonderfully gentle, supportive, encouraging family. After med school, I went to Denver doing a residency in pediatrics. I especially like pediatrics because I came to see children are our future, and healthy children mean a better future for them and for everyone. Peds is a hopeful specialty. The most important thing about my residency, though, is that's where I met my wife. She was also a resident in pediatrics. I owe a lot to the specialty. Then I went to Washington and the White House Fellows Program. One of the people that I worked for in Washington was then President George Bush, the first President Bush, and he repeatedly talked about the notion of service, public service, inspired me and scores of others. It was during the time that I was at CDC that we got the Congress's permission to change the name of the agency to be the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and make the point that we can help people, most especially if we help them prevent disease and disability. I've had the privilege across several different jobs in different locations to work in areas of consequence. My wife and son and I came here in 1997. I was recruited by Chancellor Michael Hooker to be Dean of the School of Public Health. I wasn't a Tar Heel born, but for the last 21 years I've been a Tar Heel bred. The opportunities at Carolina to collaborate broadly, to do things with a team of people that span many disciplines and many parts of the university and the state is something that just doesn't exist many other places. One of the things that I especially appreciate about this state, it has a decades-long tradition of people coming together from business or community leadership or elected officials who join together, R's and D's, to do important things to make our state a better place. We see it happening right now in the wake of Hurricane Florence, where people have joined together to help their neighbors and their fellow citizens. It's a beautiful state and has wonderfully kind and hospitable people. I've been blessed by thousands of people who have helped me along the way. I surely know that whatever I've accomplished has been a team effort. I'm honored by this award, but Bill Roper didn't do this by himself. Life's a team effort. Bobby Kennedy said, "Many people see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask why not." That's part of what I'm about.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Public Service, Bill Roper.
Good evening, and thank you all. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Secretary Hamilton, for this prestigious award. Let me also express my gratitude to my wonderful wife and our great son for their love and support. And I want to thank my family and friends and colleagues for joining here tonight. I congratulate this evening's other award recipients and the past awardees. It's truly an honor to be named among you all. But as you just heard me say on another occasion, I stand here tonight as a part of a team, the team that is UNC Healthcare and UNC Medicine. Last year, across our network of hospitals and clinics and offices, we had 4.6 million outpatient visits and 160,000 hospital admissions. UNC Health includes over 30,000 talented and dedicated North Carolinians. They work every day to improve the health and well-being of our entire state. That's what it means to be the state's healthcare system. And UNC Medicine is a world-class academic medical institution, training the next generation of health professionals and pushing back the frontiers of biomedical knowledge with innovation and expertise. I'm tremendously honored by this award, and please know I believe I'm wonderfully blessed. But recognize this is not just about Bill Roper. I wouldn't be standing before you tonight without that team, the amazing people of UNC Health and UNC Medicine who have helped us fulfill our mission of service, public service, to the people of North Carolina. Thank you very much.
Our next award recipient. In March 1960, 3 African-American activists were arrested in Savannah, Georgia during a sit-in at a whites-only restaurant. This watershed moment in the city's civil rights movement is now commemorated by a historical marker honoring the protesters' courage. Our next award winner was one of them. A fearless advocate for the disadvantaged, for people of color, and for working families, she has clearly never been afraid to stand up for what she believes is right. As a leader with the NAACP for over 40 years, she's been involved in voter education and registration and has worked to overturn unfair election laws, ensuring that everyone's right to vote is protected. Currently an elected Guilford County Commissioner and a lifelong public servant, she remains a thoughtful, passionate leader and a warrior for social justice. And now, in her own words, Carolyn Coleman.
I grew up in segregated Savannah on a dirt street. Just across one of the main streets was the white community, and all of the streets were paved. And my mother and several of the neighbors would walk throughout the neighborhood to get petitions signed to ask for the streets to be paved. I was in high school, and the vice president of the NAACP came to speak to my American history class. And of course, I joined the youth council, and a group of us were going to sit in at department stores. I happened to have been one of the 3 that was the first arrested in Savannah. That started my NAACP involvement. So they offered me an opportunity to come to North Carolina and be the state director. And I was here for 2 weeks, and in fact was out purchasing a refrigerator when I received the call that the 5 persons that were killed here in Greensboro had been killed by the Klan. And that was the beginning of my work in North Carolina. As state director, traveled the state, working on everything. The last time we had that terrible storm, and places like Princeville had water up on the side of the homes that were almost to the roof. So we worked with that entire area to rebuild that community. I've never had the experience of bodies, caskets, coming up out of the water, floating down the street when there was a storm, but that happened in Princeville. We were able to rebury all of those people, identify who they were, and that meant a lot to the families. The bottom line is, what can you take back to your community? All the work that I've done, whether it was for the NAACP or for the governor or even now, I would not have taken a salary if I didn't need it. In 1992, a friend had recommended me to the governor. He said, Carolyn, I'm organizing my campaign staff. I'm going to run for governor again, and I've gotten all of the staff, but I need one other person, and that person is you. I worked for Governor Hunt for 8 years, and my job was advising him on policy, personnel, legislation, and minority affairs. Young people who I believe were about 5th grade when they started touring the Capitol. My office was the office before you reach the governor's office, and they would always pass my office and see black people sitting in there, and they'd stop and just wave. I mean, it meant something to them to see a person that looked like them in a top position in the Capitol, and they could aspire to do the very same thing. It makes a difference when you can make the decision about your community. 2 years ago, some members of our board decided that they would build an animal shelter in my district, which is predominantly black. When you locate something like an animal shelter, it's going to devalue the property. I met with the citizens after having left that meeting, and they agreed they did not want it. And of course, we were successful in getting them to move it. The fact is that people are still working to make a change, working to make a difference. And anybody who lives on this earth and dies and can't say that they helped someone didn't deserve the life that they had.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the recipient of the 2018 North Carolina Award for Public Service, Carolyn Coleman.
Thank you, Governor Cooper, Secretary Hamilton, ladies and gentlemen. This is really a night where we celebrate all that happens that's good in North Carolina. I am pleased to have friends and family join me tonight. I want to thank my cousin Stephania, who's come all the way from Dallas, Texas. My family and friends that have come from Savannah, Georgia. My friends that have come from the NAACP across the state. My friends that have come from my church, and so they know the life that I live. My friends, Christy, Michael, and Cheryl, that have worked with me in the governor's office, and they have meant so much to my life. But mostly I want to thank a few people who are responsible for my being here tonight. I want to start with Courtney Patterson, who nominated me for this prestigious award. I want to thank all of the committee members of this committee that have given the award. And then I want to thank my granddaughter, who puts up with me all the time. My dear friend Edna Jackson has been a best friend, even in the civil rights movement, and is here from Savannah, Georgia, so I especially want to thank Edna. Now, you've heard me talk about Governor Hunt, and he sent me a note indicating that he was sorry he could not be here. But Governor Hunt taught me the real meaning of North Carolina's motto, to be rather than to seem. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to be the one who gives, because I know that as I give, it will come back to me. I want to especially thank Mr. Ron Penny, who is now Secretary of the Department of Revenue, for he was one of the lawyers that moved across the state as we began to sue, challenging the at-large elections of city council members, county commissioners, school board members, etc. It's almost as though we're living our lives again, Ron, for we're having to make these same challenges all over again. But it is such a pleasure to give rather than to always take. And I can tell you that Marion Wright Edelman has said that service is the rent we pay for living on this earth, not the mortgage we pay, because the mortgage ends, but the rent we pay, for that is continuous. I challenge each of you, whatever you do in the line of service, just do a bit more, for there are so many people, especially in North Carolina, after the hurricane and the storm here, that now are in great need, and I challenge each of us to help them recoup from where they are and return to where they once were. Thank you, and God bless you.
I think it's pretty clear that each of our 2018 North Carolina Award recipients exemplifies the motto of our great state, esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem. I want to thank John Wilson and the other members of our awards committee for their hard work selecting this year's honorees. They did a good job. Let's give them a great hand. Now I would be honored if our 2018 award winners would come back to the stage so that we can congratulate them one last time. Please join me in another round of applause for Bill Leslie, Michael McFee, Barbara Millhouse, Gene Roberts, Bill Roper, and Carolyn Coleman, our 2018 North Carolina Award winners. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to honor these remarkable North Carolinians. Good night, everyone. Have a great evening.